Welcome back to the Deep Dive, everyone. And a really big welcome today if you're joining us through the Book on a Shelf channel.
Great to be diving in again.
Today, we're not just, skimming a classic. We are getting forensic. We're taking apart a masterpiece that, frankly, set the stage for so much Western thought on moral conflict.
That's right. We're going deep into Sophocles' Antigone.
And this isn't just a story summary. We're treating this play almost like a living document. Political philosophy, ethics, it's all in there.
It really is. And to do that, we've gathered quite the stack of sources. We've got textbook excerpts, detailed character analyses, scene-by-scene breakdowns, literary theory, historical context, the works.
All to help us and you navigate this incredibly fundamental conflict. I mean, it's a question societies are still wrestling with, isn't it? Where does your ultimate loyalty actually lie?
Exactly. That's the absolute core of it. Is it with your family, that sacred blood bond, personal dignity?
Or is it with the state, the civil law that holds society together?
Or, and this is maybe the biggest one in Antigone, is it with the gods, those ancient, unwritten, eternal laws?
It's an impossible choice, really. And our mission today is to get inside the heads of these characters who are just trapped between these massive forces. By the end of this, you'll have, I think, a much deeper insight into why they make the choices they do.
But before we even get to the play's opening lines, we have to understand the background. The sheer weight of tragedy hanging over this family. We're talking about the royal house of Thebes, Oedipus's family.
Right. This isn't happening in a vacuum. It's the tail end, the culmination of generations of just horrific, fatalistic stuff. Curses, prophecies fulfilled.
The family history alone is, well, brutal doesn't quite cover it. You've got Oedipus. He discovers his own terrible crimes, killing his father, marrying his mother, blinds himself, goes into exile.
Leaving his two sons, Eidocles and Polynices, to rule Thebes. And they had a deal, didn't they? To alternate year by year.
They did. But that famous tragic flaw, that hamartia, it seems to run deep in this bloodline. Because when Eidocles' year is up, he refuses to step down.
Claims Polynices isn't fit to rule, I think.
Something like that. The sources suggest it was a power grab, plain and simple. And this refusal, this broken promise, sparks the final terrible act of the family curse.
Because Polynices doesn't just accept it, he flees Thebes.
And does the unthinkable. He goes to Argos, a longtime enemy of Thebes, mind you, raises an army there, and marches back to attack his own home city.
An act of treason, essentially, driven by his own sense of grievance.
Absolutely. And the resulting battle is a catastrophe. The sources are clear. The two brothers find each other on the battlefield, and in this final, awful symmetry, they kill each other.
The curse fulfilled. The ultimate fratricide.
Exactly. So both princes are dead, the throne is empty again, and the next in line, their uncle, Creon, Jocasta's brother,
who suddenly finds himself king of a city that's just been through civil war, is terrified, probably deeply divided.
Right. He steps into this power vacuum, needing to restore order immediately. And the very first decision he makes, his first act as ruler, sets up this immediate, unavoidable clash. State law versus sacred duty, man versus the gods.
And that decision is the trigger for everything that happens in the play Antigone.
It kicks it all off.
Okay, so let's dig into that setup. Creon takes charge. Scene one, How does he present himself?
Sophocles stages it very deliberately. Creon enters at what he himself calls an auspicious dawn. He's positioning himself as the strong hand on the tiller, guiding the ship of state, that's his metaphor, safely back to harbor after the storm.
He doesn't really ease into it, does he? He imposes his authority right away. That ship metaphor is key. The state is everything.
Everything. And he immediately lays out his governing philosophy. And it is, let's say, ruthlessly practical. Our sources really highlight his declaration. He holds contempt, he says, for any governor who's afraid to follow the course that he knows is best for the state.
That's chilling language. It's the language of the ends justify the means, almost. Stability above all else.
And he tries to give it this moral justification, too. He explicitly says public welfare comes before private friendship. He even calls God to witness this principle.
So for Creon, there's no room for individual conscience if it conflicts with what he decides is good for Thebes.
None whatsoever. And this sets up his absolute unshakable position. A traitor must never be honored. Not in life, and certainly not in death.
Which leads directly to that horrifying decree about the two brothers. It's the engine of the whole play.
It is. Eteocles, the son who died defending Thebes. He gets a hero's burial. Full military honor. Standard procedure, you might say.
But Polynices, the one who attacked the city.
Total denial of sacred rights. Creon's orders are shockingly specific, even gruesome. Polonice's body must be left on the plain, unburied, unmourned, to become, and this is a direct quote the sources emphasize, a sweet treasure for carrion birds.
Just left out there for the vultures and wild dogs.
Yes, and the penalty for anyone who dares to defy this order.
Stoning. Stoning to death in the public square.
It's not just punishment, it's a spectacle, a public deterrent, designed to crush any dissent before it even starts.
Now, we need to pause here because for us today, burial might seem, important, but maybe not this level of critical. But for the ancient Greeks,
Oh, it was absolutely fundamental. This is critical context. The obligation to bury your dead with the proper rites wasn't just custom, it was seen as sacred duty, a divine law.
and the belief was if you didn't do it, if a body was left unburied.
The soul, the ghost, could never find peace. It would be trapped, wandering eternally between the world of the living and the underworld, unable to reach Hades. It was a truly terrifying fate.
So Creon, with this decree, isn't just making a political statement. He's consciously, deliberately challenging a core religious belief, a divine tradition older than Thebes itself.
Absolutely. He's putting his law, the law of the state, his need for control, directly above the laws of the gods. He's essentially daring the gods to respond.
And in Greek tragedy, you just know that's a recipe for disaster.
It's the definition of setting yourself up for a fall. The stage is perfectly set for this clash between human law and divine law.
Okay, so the decree is made. Now we cut immediately to the prologue. Antigone and her sister Ismene. And Antigone already knows what she has to do.
Yeah, there's no hesitation for Antigone. The sources show her coming to Ismene, just filled with this desperate urgency, this righteous anger. She immediately brings up the family curse, sees this decree as the latest manifestation of it.
She asks her straight up, doesn't she? Have they told you the new decree?
Yes. And for Antigone, this isn't a political issue. It's deeply personal and religious. She frames the choice for Ismene in stark ethical terms. Now you can prove what you are, a true sister or a traitor to your family.
Her own intention is crystal clear. I am going to bury him. Will you come? It's not even a question of if it's right, just will you help?
For her, Creon is irrelevant in the face of this higher duty. She says he's not strong enough to stand in my way. Divine law trumps human law. End of story.
But Ismene, she represents the other side, the practical fear.
Completely. She immediately pushes back, and her argument is rooted entirely in fear and, well, pragmatism. She recites the family's horrific history, Oedipus, Jocasta, their brothers killing each other, almost as a justification for just keeping your head down.
Her core argument, which is so revealing about the position of women in that society, is we are only women. We cannot fight with men, Antigone. The law is strong. We must give in to the law.
That line, we are only women, it's crucial, isn't it? She sees herself and Antigone as fundamentally powerless against the male authority of the state, personified by Creon.
She talks about the public good, siding with Creon's rationale, because the alternative is death. She's terrified, and she pleads with Antigone to at least keep the plan a secret.
But Antigone wants no part of secrecy or pragmatism. She calls her intended act a holy crime. Think about that phrase, a crime against the state, yes, but a holy one that earns honor in the afterlife.
And she delivers that absolute killer line about where the real demands lie. It is the dead, not the living, who make the longest demands. We die forever.
Let's just sit with that for a second. It's profound. She's saying, mortal life, mortal laws, Creon's power. It's temporary, dust. But the obligations to the dead, to the gods, that's eternal.
That's the chasm between them, isn't it?
Yeah.
Antigone sees eternity. Ismene sees the immediate terrifying present.
Precisely. Antigone basically accuses Ismene of valuing human laws over the laws of the gods. She draws a very sharp moral line.
The sources often describe Antigone as fiery, ready to embrace death if it means honoring the divine. While Ismene is seen as, maybe unwise, but loyal in her own way, just paralyzed by fear, she won't break laws made for the public good.
And Antigone's final words to her sister in that scene are just devastating. I shall be hating you soon, and the dead will too. Leave me my foolish plan. She chooses isolation. She chooses death, potentially, but with honor in her own eyes and the eyes of the gods.
The choice is made. Antigone goes off to do the deed. And then the structure shifts. The chorus enters. The parodos.
Right, the entry song of the chorus, the elders of Thebes. And their song immediately sets the political mood. They're celebrating victory. They see Polonices as the enemy, the wild eagle screaming insults against the city.
So, initially at least, they seem to be fully behind Creon. They support the decision to dishonor the traitor.
Yes, it shows Creon isn't acting entirely alone at first. There's a sense of civic unity against the attacker. Polynices did attack his own city.
But that unity doesn't last long, because then the century arrives, and his entrance is almost comical if it weren't so serious.
It tells you everything about Creon's rule already. The Sentry is terrified, he's rambling, making excuses, clearly dreading delivering bad news to the new king. He literally says he drew the short straw and is walking straight into trouble.
His fear speaks volumes, doesn't it? Sophocles uses him to show the immediate chilling effect Creon has on ordinary people.
Absolutely, no one feels safe contradicting him.
And the news itself is baffling. Someone has performed burial rites for Polynices.
But not a full burial. The Sentry describes it as just a light dusting of earth. Just mounded over. Just enough for the ghost's peace. Enough to satisfy the religious requirement, maybe.
And crucially, no clues. No footprints, no tools, no sign of who did it. It's mysterious.
Which leads the choragus, the leader of the chorus, representing piety and maybe common sense, to ask the obvious, dangerous question. Can it be that the gods have done this?
And Creon's reaction.
He explodes. The text says furiously. This is the moment his hybris, his pride, really takes center stage. He absolutely refuses to consider that the gods might have intervened, especially to honor a traitor.
He dismisses it out of hand. Argues the gods wouldn't help someone who tried to destroy their temples. His political paranoia just takes over.
He can't imagine any motive other than rebellion or money. He immediately leaps to the conclusion that it must be stiff-necked anarchists who bribe the guards.
He actually says that famous line about money being the root of all evil.
He does. Money. There's nothing in the world so demoralizing as money. It shows his worldview. He can only understand things through the lens of power, corruption, and political maneuvering.
And the dramatic irony is just crushing, because we, the audience, know it wasn't anarchists or bribes. It was Antigone, a young woman acting alone out of religious conviction.
Creon's assumption that it must be men, a conspiracy, sends him down completely the wrong path. He's looking for political enemies, not confronting a moral challenge.
And his threat to a poor sentry.
Horrifying. I'll string you up alive unless you find the culprit. The sentry is just relieved to escape with his life, vowing never to come back. It just reinforces the terror Creon inspires.
This whole section ends with Ode 1, the Ode to Man, which is famous in its own right.
Incredibly famous. The chorus sings this amazing ode praising human ingenuity, our mastery over the sea, animals, language, thought, even statecraft, building cities, creating laws.
But there's a catch, isn't there? A warning.
A huge warning. Man is powerful, yes, but he can't conquer death. And crucially, his skills, his laws, his statecraft, they can lead to ruin if not tempered by justice, by reverence for the higher laws.
The ode concludes by warning against anarchy, saying, "Never may the anarchic man find rest at my hearth." But the ambiguity is powerful whose laws are being broken here, Creon's or the gods.
Exactly. It connects human achievement, like Creon's attempt to govern, directly to the necessity of law, but leaves open the question of which law holds ultimate authority.
And right on cue, as the chorus finishes pondering law and order, the sentry comes back. Scene 2. And he's got someone with him.
Yes, he returns initially a bit smug, actually, because he's cracked the case and saved his own skin. But he also seems genuinely troubled by what he's done.
So what happened? How did they catch her?
They went back, uncovered the body again. The description is grim. It was starting to decompose, and they waited.
And
then the sudden, violent dust storm blows up out of nowhere, like a divine sign, maybe.
Yeah.
The air fills with grit. The sky disappears. They just had to endure it.
And when the storm passed.
There she was, Antigone, crying out this high, bitter cry. The sentry uses this incredibly moving image, like a mother bird come back to a stripped nest, weeping because her work, burying her brother, had been undone.
That image creates instant sympathy, doesn't it? It frames her act not just as defiance, but as nurturing, almost maternal.
Definitely. And she doesn't hesitate. She immediately performs the rites, again pouring libations, the symbolic triple offering for the dead. They grab her, and she doesn't resist or deny anything.
The sentry says he feels both relief and unease, bringing her in.
Yeah, relief at saving himself, but also discomfort at condemning someone who seemed, well, maybe not criminal in the way Creon thinks.
So Creon confronts her. Do you confess this thing?
And Antigone is completely resolute. I do. I deny nothing. She stands her ground.
Now, her defense, this is really the heart of the play's argument, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's the central thematic statement. She argues Creon's law, his edict, is just human, temporary. It's weakness itself, she says, compared to the immortal, unrecorded laws of God.
She emphasizes their permanence. They weren't made yesterday. They were and shall be operative forever, beyond man utterly.
It's a direct challenge to the legitimacy of his authority. She's saying his law is fundamentally inferior because it's not divine, not eternal.
And her view on death is so crucial here, too. She basically welcomes it.
She does. She says, look, I'm mortal. I have to die sometime. Dying now for upholding divine law. That's no hardship. It's almost a release from the sorrows of her cursed family. This death of mine is of no importance, she says.
She's found a kind of freedom in that conviction, hasn't she? A freedom Creon's power can't touch.
Precisely, and she throws that challenge right back at him. Think me a fool if you like, but it may well be that a fool convicts me of folly. Ouch.
How does Creon take that?
Badly. Very badly. His reaction shows it's less about justice now and all about his own power. He accuses her of double insolence first, breaking the law, and second, boasting about it.
And then that key line revealing his insecurity. Who is the man here, she or I, if this crime goes unpunished?
That says it all, doesn't it? It's become about his authority, his masculinity, his control. He sees her defiance, especially coming from a woman, his niece no less, as an intolerable threat to his rule. The sources point this out, his misogyny, his fear of appearing weak. It fuels his rigidity.
He links controlling her directly to controlling Thebes. If he can't manage his own family,
how can he manage the state? Exactly. And then Ismene is dragged in.
poor Ismene. She tries to step up now, right? Offers to share the blame.
Yes, she arrives sniffling, clearly distressed, but she finds her courage, or perhaps her guilt is too much. She says, I am guilty. She wants to share Antigone's fate.
But Antigone won't have it.
No, she rejects her fiercely, almost cruelly, as Ismene chose life, chase caution. You shall not lessen my death by sharing it. Antigone seems to need her sacrifice to be hers alone. Pure, undiluted.
It highlights her isolation, her complete commitment to her past.
It really does. And just when you think the tension can't get any higher, Ismene plays her last card. She cries out to Creon.
But she is your own son's bride.
Boom. The bombshell revelation. Antigone is engaged to Haman, Creon's own son.
Surely that must give him pause.
You'd think so. But Creon is so far gone in his rage and his hybris, he just dismisses it contemptuously. There are other fields for him to plow. He literally says he wants no wicked women for my sons.
Wow. He's willing to sacrifice his son's happiness, the continuation of his own line, for the sake of his political decree.
Absolutely. The conflict has now moved from state versus religion to state versus family, his own family. The chorus sees it clearly, remarking how the sorrow of Oedipus continues to plague his children, and now Creon is actively pouring fuel on that fire.
Which leads us straight into scene 3 and the arrival of Haman himself.
Creon assumes Haman is coming as the dutiful son, full of deference and with love, ready to accept his father's decision. He expects total obedience.
And Creon uses the opportunity to lecture him, doesn't he? Laying out his philosophy of absolute rule.
Oh, yes. He gives this whole speech about how sons must be attentive and dutiful. He explicitly links obedience in the family to stability in the state.
And then comes that absolutely terrifying line about government. Whoever is chosen to rule must be obeyed in all things, great and small, just and unjust.
Chilling, isn't it? That's the doctrine of absolute, unquestioning obedience. Morality doesn't even enter into it. For Creon, the greatest evil is anarchy. Anarchy. Disobedience is the ultimate sin.
And he ties it back to Antigone.
Directly. He says allowing a woman to defy him would be the ultimate breakdown of order. He argues, show me the man who keeps his house in hand, he's fit for public authority. Failure with Antigone means failure as king.
But Haman isn't the yes man Creon expects.
Not at all. He starts respectfully, but he comes bearing reason. And importantly, news from the street. He points out Creon's big flaw. His temper is so feared that nobody dares tell him the truth. They only tell him what he wants to hear.
Which means the king is isolated, ruling in an echo chamber.
Exactly, a fundamental weakness of tyranny. And Haman says, Father, the people don't agree with you. They're whispering. They actually admire Antigone's generous act. They think she shouldn't die for honoring her brother.
So the city isn't unified behind Creon after all.
Not according to Haman. He's bringing the voice of the people, the voice of reason, into the palace. And then he uses those brilliant metaphors.
The tree and the sailor.
Yes. He argues that a man who thinks only he has the power to reason correctly turns out empty. He compares Creon to a tree that stands rigid in a flood and gets ripped out by the roots, while the tree that bends survives.
Like a sailor who needs to slacken the sail in a storm, or the whole ship capsizes. Flexibility versus rigidity.
It's the core thematic argument against Creon's entire approach. Be reasonable. Listen, yield when you're wrong. Stubbornness leads to destruction.
And this exchange contains the real political heart of the play, doesn't it? When Haman says,
It is no city if it takes orders from one voice. That's a direct challenge to autocracy. It's almost a whisper of democratic sentiment.
and Creon's response is just pure arrogance. The state is the king.
He cannot separate his person from the office.
Yeah.
And Haman delivers that devastating comeback. Yes, if the state is a desert, if you silence everyone else, you're ruling over nothing.
The argument just falls apart after that, doesn't it? It gets personal.
Completely. Creon resorts to insults, accuses Haman of being girl-struck, an adolescent fool, saying his arguments are just driven by lust for Antigone.
He dismisses his son's plea for justice as mere infatuation.
And when Haman persists, Creon loses it. He threatens to have Antigone killed right there in front of Haman.
Which provokes Haman's warning. That chilling line, her death will cause another.
Creon immediately assumes Haman is threatening him, his paranoia again. But Haman clarifies no, he means himself. He'll kill himself if Antigone dies. His final words to Creon are full of despair. There is no threat in speaking to emptiness. He storms out, vowing his father will never see him again.
A complete rupture. Father and son. Devastating.
And even after that, Creon only yields a tiny bit. He spares his maid fine. She didn't actually do the burying.
Antigone.
His sentence becomes even crueler in a way. He won't have her stoned publicly now. Instead, he'll lock her living in a vault of stone, entombed alive.
With just a little food.
Why? That's the chilling part. The text says it's to absolve the state of her death. By not directly executing her, by leaving her fate technically to starvation or the gods in the tomb, Creon thinks he can avoid ritual pollution, avoid direct responsibility.
He's trying to game the system. Outsmart the gods.
Seems like it. He says maybe the gods of hell, whom she respects so much, will save her. Or maybe she'll learn too late that piety shown the dead is pity in vain. He's still defiant, still trying to assert his power, even while modifying the sentence.
It's a horrifying compromise. Imprisoning the living as a way to deal with honoring the dead. This sets up the final act, doesn't it? The point of no return.
Absolutely. Because now the divine forces have to intervene, which leads us to scene 5 and the arrival of Tiresias.
The blind prophet. The one figure Creon probably should listen to.
Definitely. Tiresias has guided Thebes before. He has immense authority. And he comes with terrible news. The gods are angry, the city's polluted.
How does he know? What are the signs?
He describes performing bird augury, listening to the birds and hearing only chaos. Fighting, screaming, tearing talons, and then the burnt offering on the altar. It failed. No flame. Just sputtering, greasy smoke and slime. Unmistakable signs of divine displeasure.
And the calls?
Tiresias spells it out. Creon's decree. Because Polonice's body is being eaten by dogs and birds, those same animals are bringing the corruption back to the city's altars and hearths. The gods are literally refusing Thebes' sacrifices. They're deaf to prayers.
He directly confronts Creon's core flaw, doesn't he?
Right to the heart of it. The only crime is pride. Hybris. That excessive pride that makes a mortal think they can defy divine order. Tiresias urges him, pleads with him, give in to the dead man, admit you were wrong, yield. It's the only way.
And Creon's reaction, even to Tiresias.
Predictable, sadly. Arrogance. Insults. He accuses the old prophet of being bribed. The generation of prophets has always loved gold, he spits out.
Wow. He accuses Tiresias of corruption.
Yes. Which provokes that classic retort from Tiresias. The generation of kings has always loved brass, meaning base power, stubbornness. He basically tells Creon he's throwing away wisdom for the sake of pride.
And then Tiresias lowers the boom. The prophecy.
The devastating prophecy. Because Creon refuses to yield, the cosmic balance must be violently restored. Tiresias declares, the time is not far off when you shall pay back corpse for corpse, flesh of your own flesh.
Chilling. He explains Creon's double crime.
Yes. 1. Imprisoning the living Antigone, who belongs to the world above, has been thrust into living night. 2. Denying the dead Polonices, who belongs to the gods below, has been kept from them.
So he's offended both the upper and lower worlds.
Exactly. And the consequences will be dire. The Furies, the agents of divine vengeance, are stirring. And not just that, but curses will rise against Thebes from other cities, grieving for their own sons left unburied, following Creon's terrible example.
This must finally get through to Creon.
It seems to. After Tiresias leaves, the Choragus confirms it. Tiresias has never been wrong. The prophecy is real. And you see Creon finally crack.
He admits it's hard to give in, but
But it is worse to risk everything for stubborn pride. He finally understands the stakes. He yields, "I will not fight with destiny." He orders his attendants. They must go immediately, free Antigone, and give Polynices a proper burial.
The Courageous urges him to go himself, quickly.
Yes, you must go yourself. You cannot leave it to others. Time is critical. And Creon agrees, finally grasping the truth too late. The laws of the gods are mighty, and a man must serve them to the last day of his life.
He realizes, but it's tragically late. The correction comes just moments too slow, and we learn about the consequences, the catastrophe, from the messenger in the final part, the Exodus.
Right. The messenger enters with that classic tragic opening, lamenting how fate works. Fate raises up, and fate casts down the happy and unhappy alike. Creon, who seemed triumphant, is now, the messenger says, a walking dead man. His life is empty.
So what happened? Did they bury Polynices first?
They did. The messenger reports Creon and his men went to the plain first. They prayed, bathed the remains, performed the rites, burned the body properly, and built a mound of earth over the ashes. They finally fulfilled the sacred duty.
His submission to the gods' law. But then they rushed to the tomb.
They rushed to Antigone's vault, and as they approached, Creon heard a voice crying from inside, a voice he recognized with horror. It was Hammon.
Oh no.
Creon feared the worst, maybe some deception of the gods. They forced the entrance open, looked inside, and saw the horrific scene. She had already hanged herself, used her own linen veil, just like her mother Jocasta, a final act of desperate, tragic self-determination. He was there, holding her body, his arms about her waist, lamenting her, his love lost underground, utterly destroyed by grief.
Creon tried to speak to him.
Yes, pleaded with him. But Hammon, mad with grief and rage, just spat in his face, didn't say a word, drew his sword.
Lunged at Creon.
Yes. Tried to kill his own father. Creon managed to dodge the blow, and Hammon, in that moment of ultimate despair, turned the sword on himself, drove it deep into his own side.
Oh, gosh.
He died right there, collapsing against Antigone, his blood spilling onto her pale cheek. The prophecy fulfilled. Corpse for corpse, flesh of your own flesh. Hammon paid the price for his father's pride.
But the tragedy wasn't over yet, was it? Eurydice, Creon's wife?
No, the ruin had to be total. Eurydice had been nearby, heard the messenger's initial report of Hammon's death. She didn't scream or cry. She just turned, went silently back into the palace, a terrifying silence.
And then the messenger comes back again.
Later, yes, with the final piece of news. Eurydice went to the household altar, took a knife, and killed herself.
Her last word.
A curse. A final curse on her husband Creon, calling him the murderer of her sons. Plural. Not just Hammon, but also Megareus, their other son who had died earlier fighting for Thebes. She blames Creon's reign, his hybris, for all of it.
So Creon returns, carrying Hammon's body.
Bearing, as the text says, his own damnation. And the recognition, the anagnoresis, is absolute. He looks at his dead son and says, I was the fool, not you, and you died for me. He takes all the guilt.
And then he sees Eurydice's body is brought out.
And he just completely breaks, shattered. He understands the totality of his ruin, the devastating power of fate he unleashed through his own pride. Whatever my hands have touched has come to nothing. Fate has brought all my pride to a thought of dust. The tyrant is reduced to nothing.
A complete political and personal collapse.
Utter devastation, the direct result of placing his will above reason, family, and the gods.
What an incredible, devastating journey. Okay, let's try to synthesize this. We've seen this perfect, terrible collision. Antigone, representing divine law, family loyalty, maybe individual conscience.
Versus Creon, embodying civil law, the power of the state, the need for order at any cost.
And ultimately, Creon's system, his philosophy, it fails catastrophically because of his flaw, his hybris, that stubborn pride, that refusal to listen, to bend, to acknowledge a higher authority. It literally destroys everyone he loves.
He learns wisdom, as the play says, but far, far too late. His authority needed wisdom, needed humility, and he lacked both until it cost him everything.
The Courageous delivers that final wisdom straight to us, the audience. Sums up the whole tragic lesson.
There is no happiness where there is no wisdom. It's as simple and profound as that.
And that wisdom, the chorus clarifies, comes from submission to the gods, reverence for something beyond the purely human, the purely political.
Leading to that final, sobering line, proud men in old age learn to be wise, a lesson learned through suffering and ruin.
Which brings us perfectly to our final provocative thought for you to chew on after this deep dive. We've analyzed the structure, the characters, the outcome. Creon is punished horribly for putting his law above the gods. So was Antigone primarily meant as, say, an allegory teaching obedience to divine power? A religious lesson?
Or considering the context, 5th century Athens, the birthplace of democracy, Sophocles' own engagement with politics, was it perhaps more pointedly a political warning? A warning against tyranny, against absolute, inflexible, singular authority, like Creon's?
Can it be both? The sources certainly suggest it resonates on both levels. A warning against unchecked pride, whether challenging the gods or silencing the governed.
It's a question that hasn't lost any of its power, has it? That tension between individual conscience, state power, and higher laws. It's still being played out every single day.
Indeed it is. Well, that brings us to the end of this deep dive into Sophocles' Antigone. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been a fascinating discussion.
If you found this journey through tragedy and political thought valuable, please do take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to the channel Book on a Shelf. We appreciate your support.
And stay tuned for our next episode.
Thanks for listening.